We live in an age of invisible warfare. Not a war fought with soldiers, but a war for your attention, your peace, and your sanity. Every notification, every headline, and every social media post is designed to trigger a reaction. To make you angry, anxious, or envious. Most people walk through life like puppets. Their strings are pulled by things they can't control: the economy, the weather, or the opinion of a stranger on the internet. We feel powerless. We feel like victims of our circumstances. But 2,000 years ago, in the bustling streets of Athens and the marble halls of Rome, a group of men discovered a mental cheat code. They built a psychological fortress that made them invincible to the chaos of the world. They didn't try to change the world. They changed the way they saw it. Welcome to episode 1 of our history of the human mind. This is the story of Stoicism, the ancient art of mental invincibility. To find the origin of this superpower, we have to start with a disaster. In 300 BC, a wealthy merchant named Zeno was sailing across the Mediterranean. He was carrying a fortune in rare purple dye. Then, the storm hit. Zeno lost everything: his ship, his cargo, his wealth, all swallowed by the sea. He washed up on the shores of Athens with nothing but the clothes on his back. Most people would have cursed the gods. Most would have surrendered to despair. But Zeno wandered into a bookstore. He started reading about Socrates. He realized that while the sea had taken his gold, it couldn't touch his character. He famously said, "My journey began when I was shipwrecked." Zeno began teaching on a stoa, a public porch in Athens. This is where Stoicism gets its name. It wasn't a philosophy for ivory towers. It was for the marketplace. It was a practical survival guide for the human soul. Stoicism is unique because it worked for people at the absolute top and the absolute bottom of society. Look at Marcus Aurelius. He was the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man on the planet. He had the power to kill anyone with a nod. But his life was a nightmare of responsibility. He spent years in muddy trenches fighting Germanic tribes. He dealt with the Antonine Plague that killed millions. He was betrayed by his closest general. In the middle of the night, he didn't write laws. He wrote a diary to himself. We now call it the Meditations. It was his mental workout. He reminded himself every day that the world's chaos couldn't touch his inner peace unless he allowed it. Now look at Epictetus. He was born a slave. His master once tortured him, breaking his leg and leaving him crippled for life. Epictetus didn't scream. He simply warned his master that the leg would break, and when it did, he said, "Did I not tell you?" How could a slave be as calm as an emperor? Because they both practiced the same psychological hack, the dichotomy of control. We have talked about the emperor, and we have talked about the slave. But to truly complete the Stoic triangle, we must look at a third man: Seneca. If Marcus Aurelius was the ultimate politician, Seneca was the ancient equivalent of a modern tech billionaire, and a celebrity rolled into one. He was a brilliant playwright, a massive landowner, and the closest advisor to the infamous, unpredictable, and downright insane Emperor Nero. Seneca had unimaginable wealth. He had mansions, estates, and thousands of servants. But Seneca knew a terrifying psychological truth: the more you own, the more you have to lose. Comfort breeds weakness. Seneca realized that people who live in constant luxury become terrified of losing it. Their wealth becomes their prison. So, he invented a psychological hack called voluntary discomfort. Even though he was one of the richest men in the world, Seneca would regularly take a few days every month to live like a beggar. He would wear the cheapest, scratchiest clothes. He would eat nothing but stale bread and drink warm water. He would sleep on the hard floor. Why? Was he crazy? No. He was training his brain. While eating that stale bread, he would ask himself, "Is this the condition that I feared?" By forcing himself to experience his worst-case financial scenario, he completely destroyed his fear of poverty. Today, psychologists use this exact method, exposure therapy, to cure phobias. If you are afraid of losing your job, your status, or your money, the Stoic solution is to occasionally practice having nothing. Take a cold shower. Sleep on the floor for a night. Fast for 24 hours. When you realize that you can survive, and even find peace, with absolutely nothing, the world loses its power to threaten you. This is the core of Stoic psychology. Imagine your mind as a filter. On the out-of-control side, you have the weather, the past, other people's opinions, the results of your work, death. On the in-your-control side, you have only one thing: your own thoughts and actions. The Stoics argued that 100% of our suffering comes from trying to control the left side. When you worry about what your boss thinks, you are a slave. When you get angry at the rain, you are fighting a ghost. But they didn't just have theories, they had exercises. First, premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. Stoics would spend time imagining the worst things that could happen, not to be depressed, but to remove the power of surprise. If you've already faced the monster in your head, it can't scare you in reality. Second, amor fati, the love of fate. Marcus Aurelius said the mind is like a fire. It turns everything thrown into it into fuel. If you get fired, it's not a disaster, it's an opportunity to find a better path. You don't just tolerate your fate, you love it. Third, memento mori. Remember you will die. This sounds dark, but it's the ultimate perspective. When you realize that you and everyone you love could be gone tomorrow, the petty arguments and modern anxieties evaporate. It forces you to live with intensity and kindness right now. So, how did they actually apply all of this? Stoicism wasn't something you just read, it was a daily mental workout. Just like you go to the gym to build muscle, the Stoics had a strict morning and evening routine to build mental armor. Every morning, Marcus Aurelius would write down a specific warning to himself. It went like this: "Today, I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." Think about how powerful that is. Instead of waking up and hoping everyone will be nice to you, you mentally prepare for human stupidity. When someone betrays you or cuts you off in traffic, you aren't shocked or angry. You expected it. You pre-programmed your mind to handle it. And when the stress of the day became too much, they used their most epic visualization technique: the view from above. When you get an angry email or someone insults you, your brain zooms in. The problem feels massive. It consumes your entire reality. The Stoics countered this by forcing their minds to zoom out. Imagine floating above your own body. See the tiny cars, the millions of people rushing around, thinking their little problems are the most important things in the universe. Look at all of human history, all the wars, all the empires, all the billionaires, happening on a microscopic speck of dust. From that cosmic perspective, how important is that angry email? How devastating is that embarrassing mistake you made 5 years ago? The view from above instantly shrinks your ego and your anxiety. It forces the brain out of the fight or flight mode and back into rational peace. For centuries, Stoicism was forgotten by the masses. But in the 1960s, psychologists began looking for a way to treat depression and anxiety that didn't just involve drugs or endless talking. They created CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It is the most successful form of therapy in the world today, and its foundation: pure Stoicism. CBT teaches that your thoughts cause your feelings, not the events themselves. If you change the internal narrative, you change the emotion. The Stoics were the world's first cognitive psychologists. They understood the OS, operating system, of the human brain long before we had the technology to map it. You don't need a toga or a throne to be a Stoic. You just need to realize that between the world's chaos and your reaction, there is a space. In that space lies your freedom. The Stoics believed the mind was a fortress, but is that fortress part of our physical body, or something more? Next time, we move from the marble streets of Rome to the cold rooms of 17th century France, where one man's doubt would create the greatest mystery in the history of psychology. Don't forget to subscribe as we continue our 12-part journey through the evolution of the human mind. Because to change your life, you must first understand the machine that creates it.